And welcome to Netflix and Kill, Unapologetic Geek Out podcast, and I am here. We're talking about some punishment today, guys, and in order to get through some punishment, it's me, Nick, the Merc with the mic, and my fellow Unapologists,
Travis,
and our guest Unapologist.
You can't protect him, Rick. You can't protect him. It's John Bernthal. Hi, guys. How you doing?
You know what? I've always wanted to ask you something, John Bernthal. Can I ask you something, man?
Sure, brother. Sure.
Why do you rub your head so goddamn much?
It calms me down a little bit, man. I need to rub my head. I'm like a little doggy. It just helps me, keeps me nice and calm. Because I'm fighting Russians. I'm fighting mobsters of all kinds. It's crazy. And then the zombies come. I was like, oh, I gotta punish everyone right now. Difficult time.
So if you're saying if I had scratched you behind the ear like a dog, you would not have turned on Rick?
No, I still would have killed that guy. I didn't like him.
Fuck him.
Killed my family.
That is, for those of you playing along at home, that is Chris Herman of the We Are Error cast.
Hi, everybody. How you doing? It's my John Bernthal impression.
Not a bad impression. I've definitely heard worse. That's for sure.
It's kind of like a lesser Macho Man Randy Savage impression to a certain extent. 'Cause the old brother, but he says brother a lot in this series, so I feel justified in saying that.
Let me tell you something, brother. No, let me tell you something, man.
Can't protect him.
Oh, man, there's so much guttural, gruntal, man screaming in this show.
That's Bernthal's go-to move, man. He loves just grunting and randomly shouting things. Like, not words, they're just like random sounds that come out of it. It's like half his dialogue.
Yeah, he does. He has this one particular scream. I'll see if I can't edit it in here.
Oh, yes.
It is weirdly primal in its animalistic nature. But yes, we are talking about the Punisher today.
Gentlemen, I'm the only authority you will need. I point, you shoot. Did you kill the target?
What did you see? Things over there were different. What we were doing was wrong. You did what you were supposed to do, right?
Now, the only person you're punishing is yourself.
Frank Castle?
I got something I need to show you.
I saw the video files.
The U.S. military turns you into a hitman, Frank.
I'm looking for Frank Castle.
The Punisher?
I think you know about my case.
Castle's the last witness. We can either clean this up or let him take us down.
They killed my family to get to me. You have nothing but a war inside you. You're gonna pay. You stay on my way. This is not your fight. Oh, please, God, wait. I need to find these bastards. I gotta kill them.
So where does that end, Frank? What if you're exposed to me?
These men, they decide what the truth is.
The same thing that happened to you happened to me. We could make that right. The world needs to see the truth.
And I decided to talk with Chris about it because Chris, while running a video game show, we got to talking a couple times about comics, so I knew he was probably interested in the Punisher.
Oh, man. I'm a huge Punisher fan.
Oh, yeah? I really like Punisher as well. I'm a more fan of the Max series.
Same.
Oh, come on. You know Frankencastle's your favorite.
Frankencastle is...
Oh, man.
That's the logical extension of that character, Travis.
course.
Is what you don't understand, is that that's the logical progression, is Frankencastle. But no, I really like the Garth Ennis written Punisher, where he's kind of a machine that just kind of murders people without any kind of...
He's a psychopath.
Oh yeah, he's totally a psychopath. And so it's interesting in this Netflix series in that, and also in the first, half season of Daredevil season 2, he is much more of a person. So that freaks me out a little bit, is that he is an actual, like, human being with character traits.
You have feelings. Ugh.
And has feelings and stuff. So that took a little for me to get used to, but ultimately I think I actually kind of like it. It would be hard to do a Punisher Max style Punisher in a TV show, and have it be, 12, 13 episodes long. And yeah, this one starts off with, Frank, where we last saw him, wrapping up some, vengeance stuff with the last few stragglers that ran away, at the end of season 2 of Daredevil.
That's pretty brutal too. That's a really brutal opening.
I'll tell you what, that opening, like the show is very strong in its opening first couple episodes, because it opens with him just mopping up shop, running over bikers. He kills a dude from another, not only another county, but from across state, country line, like the border. He kills one dude in Mexico, and it's absolutely fantastic. I think the most brutal one's got to be that bathroom kill in the very beginning, where he corners that guy in the bathroom. And he's just whispering to him. He's like, "Oh, come on, man. I have a family." I had a family too. Whoops. Oh boy.
The one guy who thinks it's like sex in the bathroom, like, have you ever heard of sex, dude? Like, ever, like, heard sex?
It depends on how you do it.
Yeah,
but
he's really like,
Just don't do it in the airport. How about that?
Yeah.
Have some common courtesy for your fellow bathroom patron.
Yeah. And didn't even wash his hands afterwards.
Ugh.
Gross.
No.
So, much to my dismay, he burns his fucking Punisher vest in the beginning.
well, he's done, Nick. He's
Punisher
done
no
punishing.
more.
Yeah, and I'm like, no! And we actually do see him pretty much quit being the Punisher for a while. He's done. He's wrapped up his vengeance. It's over for him. And he goes to a construction site to basically, Henry hit a hammer against a wall all live long day. What do we feel about Punisher? The Punisher no more storyline in the very beginning. Overall,
Well, besides the fact that it's kind of unrealistic because he just commits suicide.
I don't know. The other Frank Castles I know might. This seems like a much more nuanced Frank. I don't know, Chris. What do you think about it?
I mean, this both in Daredevil season 2 and this series, they do more to humanize, and I understand that they need to. When you're making this for like a mainstream audience, you can't have it be where you're just following a psychopath. And yeah, he might be fighting people that are more evil than he is or more psychotic than he is. But for people who aren't familiar with the work or like Garth Ennis's take on that character, I mean, that's a niche book. You wouldn't give that to someone who's trying to get into comics at the time. So I completely understand them making Punisher more personable. And John Bernthal does a great job at conveying that emotion. He is a broken man when we see him. Yeah, he killed, or what he thinks are all the people that are responsible for his family's death. But after that, there's kind of nothing left for him. And so we kind of see him where he's just like a man walking the earth. And that's fine concept. There's nothing wrong with that because we know eventually it's like, well, he's going to come out of retirement because there's still bad guys to kill. So that initial first part of the episode I enjoyed. It gets you, it's kind of like, starts at the ground level and it's eventually going to build, or what you think you would hope with the Punisher series that it would start to build. And I think for that first episode, it does a good job for the most part.
Yeah, I really like John Bernthal's version of Frank. And when I say I like him, it's not like I like the character. I say I like him like I actually kind of want to hang with him at certain points. Like I actually like this guy. He's funny. he's sympathetic. At certain points, it really does display that this is a broken human being that's kind of just trying to get through on a day-to-day basis, and that's where I feel like he is the most sympathetic. I do love his relationship with a new character, Micro, as most people will recognize him from the comics. His relationship with Micro in the show when they end up being roommates for a while is probably like the highlight for me. I really like how these guys bounce off of one another. He's very funny. I believe Micro is played by Eben Moss Bacharach. He is, while he's very sensitive and kind of, he's separated from his family in a different way than Frank is, but in kind of even more of a painful way, in like this kind of observatory role. Frank is
guy in the chair. Come on now.
Yeah, Frank is always is kind of like his surrogate go-to in between him and his family that he can no longer see anymore because of this
well,
huge...
no, he can see them.
Yeah. But the reason he can't is because he's presumed dead from this big, like, governmental conspiracy plot, dealing with the CIA and, a bunch of some of the other agencies. I believe we see the NSA in this one, where we meet Agent Madani. And yeah, the thing they choose to do in this series is to, instead of having the Punisher go after criminals, he goes after a conspiracy that he was wrapped up in when he was over in Iraq, I believe, was he in?
I think so.
Yeah. And so they switch it up a little bit, probably because I don't know if today, as the current climate of just a guy going off with a gun just to murder anyone who he feels is guilty is not exactly...
Yeah, that's probably gonna look bad.
So I really do enjoy the choice they go with, where the show does not feel very exploitative in that way. It does feel like a very personal mission on Frank's part to go after this, conspiracy thing. I think one of the main villains is actually this bald, older man who we figure out, whose later we know is named Rollins, who people will remember from the Max series. He's kind of like his character. The gist of him is the same, but he's not as crass or does a lot of the same stuff as his character from the comics does. He almost can't, because Rollins from the comics, like so many of the other villains, are so fucking vile that you just don't care what Frank does to them. Because they are so, like, they are barely, qualify as human beings.
Lovely.
I don't know. What do we think of Rollins overall? Chris, I know you've read the comics. What do you think of this?
I mean, yeah. Well, I have a few things to say. Back on your first point, I did like Micro. I think the actor did a good job. I think that some of the tension that is between Frank and Micro gets a little old at some points. It feels like they kind of, like a lot of things over the course of these episodes, they take too long with that. But at the same time, I did like their dynamic. Bernthal and Moss Bacharach, they do have a good chemistry, and they, when there is like humor between both of them, they do a good job with that. I really like that. Now for the whole conspiracy plot line, them kind of making this whole thing where it's like, well, it's more than just these criminals. It's more just, happenstance that his family died. Make it like giving the Punisher a Tom Clancy plot line to me is just so banal and generic. And that's my biggest problem with the show. I mean, not to get into final thoughts here, but what I will say about this first season is the story is bad. Like, the main plot is really bad. And I was kind of surprised that they went with this whole storyline where it's just like, oh, well, really, it's this whole thing where the government did something illegal and then all these people died and that's why Frank's family died and all these other criminals are kind of patsies. It's like, I mean, okay, that's fine, but hopefully you can make it interesting. They really don't. Like, what I kind of like about, again, I'm carrying a lot of baggage in this review. I'm a huge Punisher fan. Like I said, I've read the Max series. I've read a lot of other stuff like War Journal. So I know this character pretty well. I think it's kind of tragic and just kind of similar to Batman in a way where it was just, his parents just happened to be murdered by just a criminal, a common criminal. And it was so random in that. And that's what I liked about Frank's origin, where it was just this, a mob hit gone wrong and his family got caught in the crossfire. It was just a completely random incident. It wasn't motivated by this grand conspiracy that involved Frank and his family. And that's what I thought the tragedy is, that where Frank is fighting this war, which he knows, much like Batman, that he can never win. He's just fighting it knowing that eventually he's going to die. And that's what he wants. And they kind of go into that with this show, but not really, because, or at least you wouldn't know, because they spend so much time on, boardrooms and people talking about, we have to keep all these secrets. You have to cover this up. And it's like, okay, all right, whatever. Now in regards to, what's his name?
Rollins.
Baldy Milk Guy? Rollins. I mean, he is any Tom Clancy villain that you'd expect. He's the shadow guy, the guy in the background. He's pulling everyone's strings. What I liked about him, and again, my baggage, what I liked about him in the comics is that, yeah, he was ridiculously evil and over the top. And that's what made, his relationship, if you want to call it that, with Frank compelling, because you didn't give a shit. You just wanted Punisher to get him. Here, it's just like, all right. I mean, he's an asshole. He's clearly a sociopath, but there's nothing compelling about him whatsoever. And that's the other big thing with this series that I kind of find disappointing, is that the villains aren't really interesting, which is a shame, because, the Punisher Rose Gallery, where, yeah, they're just a bunch of kind of crazy guys and, psychopaths, and maybe, one villain in particular is kind of compelling, but, Rollins here is just really didn't work for me, except for one key point, but that's when, certain things happen to that character.
Yeah. I think one of the things here too is that Rollins is a generic, Clancy villain. Like you said, he is evil. He thinks it's hard to tell whether or not he thinks he's doing the right thing or not.
Well, because my biggest problem with him, he seems to be oblivious that everyone else is going to assume he's right. Like, he just I know I'm right, so everyone else will think it too. I'm like, no, why would you think that? Like, when he goes up to the higher up lady and she's just like, you're insane. He seems like flabbergasted. Like, what do you mean? Why would you think that?
Right. He doesn't have a lot of interactions with Frank in the first couple episodes because, first of all, they think Frank is dead. They think Micro is dead. So they're kind of working behind the scenes to get at these, at these people. So they're
trying to do a cover up.
Yeah. So they kind of Rollins is moving up in the world. So he gets straight up asked like, hey, is there anything that, could come back to bite you and or me in the ass if I were to move you up the ladder?
Nope, nothing at all.
He's like, oh, no, what? What? No. And so he has to go back and, kind of clean some stuff up, some loose ends that he thinks like, I'll just kill a couple of these people so that make sure that none of that blows back on me. And that's actually what really fucks him, because that's what runs him back into Frank.
Right. He basically finds Frank by accident.
Yeah. So there's not a whole lot of Frank, because Frank and him met up, we see him in a flashback when they first meet. And we get a little conflict off of that. But there's a little more, contention with his previous friend Billy Russo, who's now running his own Merc company as well, and him and Frank's relationship is very interesting in at least the first part of this series, because he ends up sleeping with Madani, for Agent Madani, for a little while, the NSA agent trying to find Frank. And he's like being bounced around between her, Frank's friends, and kind of like, hey, is Frank still alive? Like, it did seem like Frank was one of his best friends, at least in the first part of the series. And then later, when he figures out Frank is alive, things kind of take an interesting turn with that relationship as well. I mentioned, what was it, her name? Madani, a couple times. This is the plot line that I think really slows down the show a lot, is that we spend a lot of time with Amber Rose Reva, which is the actress that plays Agent Madani, and her partner at the NSA, gonna die. I don't know. Like, what's her fucking sidekick?
He's the chubby guy with the beard who makes jokes, so you know he's gonna die.
Yeah, it's so... I think that's what my problem with that whole storyline is that it's so fucking obvious.
Well, it's also he's the reject of the whole NSA who's like looked down on because he tried too hard and now he's cynical. I'm like, so, just go shoot yourself or something.
So there's 3 running plot lines in this story. One is the conspiracy theory stuff with Frank and Micro and Rollins, like that whole like spy stuff. Like that's the main thrust of the story. That's what the main thing is going on. There's a secondary plot line of Frank's friend, I think Isaac or something, who is Curtis. Curtis, that's right. Curtis is his friend that runs a PTSD meeting group, and he's having trouble with some of his one or two of his meeting people that show up, including this one kid played by Daniel Weber, who this actor, they did get a good actor because this kid looks like one of those mugshots you see of like man goes into Walmart and shoots 10 people. He does look like that. So there's that kind of storyline going on, and then there's this third storyline with the NSA trying to hunt down Frank and basically learning of the conspiracy theory slowly as well. And what I don't like about this storyline is that it slows everything down, and a lot of it is redundant because they're learning things that Frank and Micro learn after the fact.
Right.
So it's a lot of them going like, "Oh man, Frank was here. Did you look at this? Look at how it's kind of like to make Frank look a little more badass and like a ghost as well." Of just them like commenting like, "Oh man, I can't believe this guy with this bullet wound, crawled himself over." And I'm like, yeah, you don't have to keep stating it. I just saw that happen. I know Frank is a badass. You don't have to keep like reinforcing it. I don't know, Chris, what did you think of the Madani storyline?
It's the worst part of the show. It's like you said. It's like they're just saying things that we've already seen. It's like they're playing, keep up with Frank. It's like, okay, I get it. It's a cat and mouse kind of game. All right, that's fine. But that's the thing. You didn't need really, 8 episodes to do all of that. You could have cut that in half. Did that in 4, and then all the rest, all the rest of those episodes be like the last 4 to 5, where stuff actually starts to happen, where Frank is actually being the Punisher, and stuff starts to really hit the fan. Yeah, the whole the inclusion of just because, like you said, it feels so obvious what's going to happen. Again, it's a Clancy novel where everything's predictable, everything's going to fall into place eventually, and you're just kind of sitting there frustrated. It's like, when's anything going to happen? Oh, then of course, you have you're spending your time with Micro's family, for quite a while. And where I get it, you got to establish them. You have to have, establish Micro's, familial connection to humanize him and everything. But you could have done it where it's not 8 episodes worth, where you spend so long with that. It's just frustrating and honestly boring. The one thing I will say in regards to the kind of the PTSD storyline, where I think it led to some. I mean, I get it. It's a commentary on PTSD and when veterans come back. And that's obviously important, but it was the one storyline that, to me, you could have taken that out and it wouldn't have affected the main story at all. Except for maybe one key point. Or just, you wouldn't have like a really cool action sequence. But it just felt really weird. And where that character just goes from 1 minute, I shouldn't say 1 minute, but just where that storyline ended up and how it really had no influence over the grander picture, to me, was just kind of frustrating. Where, you had one episode which I thought was really good, which was like kind of a 24 episode basically, or what have you, where you're basically seeing it from different people's perspectives at different times, or, different people would call different events. That was cool, but you didn't need that storyline whatsoever. Which again is kind of frustrating. I will say though, you're right. The Daniel Weber, the actor who plays Lewis Wilson, he does do a really good job. Like, I'm not criticizing his performance. Like, he's great. But it's just, again, it's the story. It's what was written that just doesn't work for me.
Well, I think the main problem with the whole PTSD character arc is that it's not Punisher's storyline. It has way more to do with Karen Page than Punisher.
Yeah, Karen Page shows back up in this show too, and she frustrates me like she does in every fucking show she shows up in.
She's going to be the head editor of the paper next, right? Is that what's going to goes from secretary to paralegal, journalist?
Okay, that's not how careers
right?
work.
That's the arc.
It is for her.
That's some bullshit.
You know, actually, no, she's going to be the president of the NSA next. Why not?
That's it. Sounds good. Yeah, she knows what she's talking about.
Also, the one thing that the the PTSD storyline goes down with her, it ends up going to where like there's a weird message in this show, because at first like it's all about like the PTSD thing. I'm like, okay, I'm kind of rocking with this. Then suddenly Karen Page shows up and she plays what is like, I don't know, compassionate conservative of like, oh, but don't you believe in the rights of people to carry guns? And aren't you being stereotypical for hiring people with guns to protect you from a guy with a gun? And I'm like, no, he's being smart. That's a stupid fucking question, Karen. Like, no, I won't have anyone with guns around me at all. In fact, I'm gonna just have a big old target spray painted or across my chest at all times. It's a public figure. What the fuck, Karen? You're supposed to be a reporter. Ask a smart question, you idiot.
Yeah, I really disliked her whole pro-gun thing where I'm like, you've been shot at repeatedly.
Well, then it's like, oh, she has a gun too, and it's like, yeah, I'm fully licensed. Like, yeah, that's the
point.
That's the argument. And then they show the politician as being this, cowardly politician, and he doesn't even argue gun rights, gun legislation correctly. He's just like, well, this and that. I'm like, no, just say like, I believe in people's rights to, have, legally obtain guns, but we need to regulate it like any other substance. He never even says regulation.
No.
They treat it as a zero sum, and I'm like, what the fuck is this? This is bullshit. But that's the liberal in me talking, I think. I did not appreciate that they kind of left that, like, they left it very heavily on the one side of like, yeah, guns are pretty alright.
Well, I will say about that, I mean, I just think, again, they just didn't, it felt like they wanted to say something, but they just didn't put in enough effort to actually say something that is of substance. If you want to like present both sides, that's fine. Or you want to present a point of view or whatever, that's okay. It felt like they were kind of like, I don't know, waffling over that entire thing, that entire sequence between her and the senator who wants to, I guess, pass, gun control legislation. Like, they just kind of like, this is something, there you go. But then it leaves, that's only covered in what, like 2 episodes, if not 1. So it just felt like they had an idea and they just kind of dropped it. It's like you could have, had an opportunity to say something, what other side of the debate you're on, but they just didn't really. Just kind of left it up in the air. It's like, oh, who knows? Like a shrug of the shoulders type thing.
Yeah, I guess
so that was kind of weird.
I guess they did kind of like have it to where both people just had shitty arguments. That was just like,
why bring it up then at all?
But yeah, I did. I think I really liked for this whole season structurally. I really like the first, like, I think 4 episodes, and then like the last 3 are like, I think are like the best ones out of the whole group. It like really picks up steam for me at the last like couple episodes, action wise and stuff. Well, he finally. I mean, if you're here for the skull shirt,
oh, you're waiting.
That thing does not show up until like, man, when the fuck does it actually show back up? Like episode 10?
Yeah, it's like the third last episode.
10.
It's like, yeah, it's like episode 10. Once it burns in episode 1, you ain't seen it again until episode 10. But yeah, they have in episode 10. If you are a fan of the Max series and you're waiting for them to really cut loose with Frank and have him really go at people, the episode 10 is where you might want to skip to, because that's where Punisher Max actually shows up. That was a really badass action sequence that I really liked. The rest of the action in the show is pretty good as well. It's on a smaller scale. It's playing up the whole conspiracy angle kind of first and foremost. But we do get like a shootout or a big fight scene or something almost once per episode. At least it feels like. What'd you feel about the action, Chris?
And it's funny that you said that like once per episode. I guess Maybe we did, but I can't remember them, especially in like in the first episode. Yeah, we get that opening sequence and him, shooting the shit out of some Italian mobsters and, smashing some people's faces in that first episode. But I can't honestly tell you if there was anything else like a really like, just captures your imagination type of action scene or, grabs your attention. I can't really remember that for like episode 2 through 8 really. But, it is after like 9 and then all the way to 13 that we do get some really good action. And they're all filmed really well. They're not doing any shaky cam. It's all steady. You're following Punisher the entire time. You're never confused about what's happening. That's great. And Bernthal, again, he brings this physicality to the role, which you need, and that does such a great job. I mean, he's terrifying. I mean, in those scenes, he is a monster. And anytime that you have like all these, like a bunch of guys, you're like, oh, they're all fucked. Cause you know what's going to happen.
Oh yeah.
And
like,
in most cases, it's horrific.
They bring those guys in to raid on the facility, and Frank, like, rather than get everybody out of there, Frank's like, nah, I'm just going to wait for him. Yep. And when they finally show up, you get this Aliens vibe of like, just like they got the high tech equipment. They're all trying to like search for him. I was expecting one guy to like bring out his shotgun and go like, I like to keep this for close encounters. Like,
right.
And yeah, he starts picking them off, and it's pretty cool. Like, you have to suspend your disbelief of like, okay, how many times can he get shot and just like recover in like the next episode?
Sure. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I mean, they sort of made a bullshit excuse in Daredevil where it's like, I can meditate and kind of accelerate my healing. And then this one is just like, I guess Frank is just too much of a badass.
He's just a monster, that's all. He's part Wolverine. Well, he gets shot. He gets shot with an arrow. He gets hit he gets tortured at one point in the show. It's nothing can really keep him down. He does have some downtime. He actually has 2 different times where he actually is down for a little bit at least.
Mm-hmm. That's actually a good point. They don't bring up, you don't know what the passage of time is on this show. You don't do a good job of telling you, okay, when did this happen? And then, it was the next day. They don't show you. So I can only assume, based on his injuries, which are many. Again, stabbed, shot with arrows, bullets, glass in the arm, all that stuff. I guess that you can say maybe it just takes place over the course of a few months, at the very least.
Mm-hmm.
That was kind of weird where they didn't really tell you. You gotta, extend your disbelief there. That's fine. I can do that. But it was a little weird. I'm like, okay, well, he does need some time to recover from some of these horrific injuries.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I do really like the flashback sequences they put in here with Clancy Brown coming back.
Sure.
And showing his time with Operation Cerberus. Mm-hmm. Apparently the elusive man was busy, so he sent Rollins.
Exactly what I thought too. I was like, oh, I know that.
That's all right. We get to see that one mission that they talked about in season 2, which was the pretty interesting.
One that went wrong.
Yeah, the one that went super wrong. And Frank's mind for tactics is a thing that we get to see through the show. Like there's one point where he makes flash grenades out of light bulbs they can turn on.
That's pretty cool.
That is pretty rad. He also, there's just a lot of personal anger that I can feel off of Bernthal's portrayal of the Punisher whenever he's fighting. We make fun of his guttural roars, but there's a reason that he's screaming and really putting forth a lot of emotion in these fight sequences. Is that he seems very pissed, and I usually prefer my Punisher a little colder anger, but this is fine too.
Yeah, this is an emotional Punisher, which we often don't see for the most part. Even the Max series, like I said, I guess he's a psychopath, or a sociopath, whatever you want to call him, but yeah, he's always very cold and calculating, only shows warmth once in a while. It's rare. When it happens, it's it felt... It's almost like a reward for the reader. Here, you constantly get that. They constantly remind you that, no, Frank is human. And again, that works for this take on the character. And Bernthal is great at conveying that the entire time.
Yeah, and it makes the moments where he does shut down and get very scary kind of also even the more scarier. I mean the moment in the stall in the first episode where he just goes to the guy and he starts to blubber something else out and he just shh, like he just starts to shush him. I'm just like, oh Jesus. And I did like one of the moments with a very Punisher Max moment where he goes to those to resupply, get some gear and some stuff. He goes up to these like carjackers. And he has like that grenade in his hand, talking about like, hey, you know why you usually miss on the first shot? It's because of that adrenaline and that fear making your hand shake. And it's like and you see his hand just like is completely steady and still. And I'm like, okay, yeah, that's right out of the comics. Like that moment right there.
Kind of terrifying too.
Like that was awesome. Like Micro comes in, like, did you just kill that guy on that like pinball machine? Like
yeah.
Like yeah, I mean, it was around, so, yeah, for those of you averse to violence, it is a very violent show. People get shot, like, in the face a lot.
Let's face it, if you were averse to violence, you're probably not going to watch a show called Punisher anyway.
No, this is not for you. I mean, one would even argue, is a Death Wish type, the type character, will it play well with audiences in today's climate? And I think the changes that they made in order to make that, easier to go down, making Frank more sympathetic, making it a conspiracy plot and like an army plot rather than, going out and murdering criminals. There's still an element of revenge there, which is always very sympathetic. I think it's not as problematic as it could have been. It probably still has a couple problems, with the whole, part in the middle with the PTSD guy, but otherwise, I got to admit, I did like this show. Of course, I'm gonna repeat myself and say what everyone else has already said, but I guess it bears repeating. Is that yes, it's too actually no, it's 3 episodes too long. Actually,
probably about that.
I would say that it usually. With these Netflix Marvel shows, they're all like that to greater and lesser extents. I think the only one that I felt like didn't drag a whole lot was the first season of The Punisher. Or no, first season of The Daredevil, my bad.
Agreed. Yeah.
This one, it tries to shake things up. Like there's a whole Rashomon episode in the middle that is actually kind of neat, where they're telling everything from, everyone else's perspectives. And I'm
yes, that's a good one.
And I'm like, oh, this is a good idea to keep things fresh in the middle portion here. So I'm not as bored with, some of this other stuff. Mm-hmm. So this helps, with it. Otherwise, structurally, it still is where those first 3-4 episodes, me and Travis watched this together. I went to Travis like, dude, I am into this. I am into this. Mm-hmm. I am ready to go. And it just sags a little bit in the middle, and I'm just like God damn it!
Every other Marvel,
and they always do that. Yeah. Like they always stretch 8 episodes of material into 13, and it never works out the way they want it to. But yeah, it does really pick up in those last couple episodes, like I said before. So, I don't know. For me, it's gonna be hard for like would I rank this one, because I don't know, there's a lot of elements I really do like about it, but there is some problems that just can't be ignored. I don't know, Chris, what were your overall feelings on this season?
I a lot of the performances are very good, at least from Bernthal, from the actor who plays Micro, even like some of the other characters, which I didn't. It's not that I thought they gave bad performances, like Ben Barnes, who Prince Caspian, who plays Russo.
I can't get over that, like that Prince Caspian thing. Like sometimes I don't recognize him from that, and then every once in a while I'll catch it. I'll be like, oh shit.
Well, he's got that pretty face.
I always recognize him more as the guy from Westworld.
Oh yeah, that's right.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, you're right. I mean, he does he gives a good performance. It's just that his storyline isn't interesting, and what they choose to do with his character just doesn't really work. It's like, okay, you're doing something different than what that character is in the comics, and I like that. I appreciate that. You're giving him more depth, but then you just kind of like abandon and go, nah, just kidding. It's just like, well, all right, well, any kind of like, you could add a really interesting dynamic between, I think, Frank and Russo in this that is very different from the comics, which is more of a like an actual friendship. But they kind of like, it feels inauthentic what they did. Like that whole like idea of a friendship feels inauthentic. It's a wasted opportunity in my opinion. Again, the action is superb anytime that there is action, which again, for that first episode, you're going to get it. Episode 2 through 8, maybe. I don't really remember. I couldn't tell you. I was just so bored really. But like 9 on, you're going to get some amazing action scenes. And then that's when it becomes The Punisher. That's when it is the show where you're actually seeing him shoot people. Again, you're still getting that great character stuff between everyone, but it's, you're in there for the action at this point. Those like in between those, I don't know, 7 episodes or however much it was, 6 or 7 episodes, that really did not work for me. It was too slow. You could have easily cut that down to 3 or 4, no problem at all. So I think that was a huge mistake. And the other thing at the end of the day is just that I don't think it's a good story that they decided to tell. Making it a whole like, grand conspiracy. Oh, it's the government. It's, these white collar guys. And this is like, okay, we've seen this so many times, and again, it's a Tom Clancy novel. And it's, you see all the pieces that are moving, exactly where they're going to go eventually. And it's like, okay, well, we got to that outcome finally. But at least you at least were slightly entertained with some cool action sequences towards the end. So yeah, it's, compared to the other Netflix shows, it's not as good as the first season or even the second season of Daredevil. I don't think it's as good as Jessica Jones. Luke Cage, it's hard. Like as it kind of goes, I'm not a Luke Cage fan, especially in the show. I don't think Mike Coulter is a very good actor. And after episode 6 of that show, that thing just takes a nosedive down.
Oh, you didn't like
it's
Diamondback?
Like, as soon as
you didn't like?
Oh my god, he's
like
one of the worst villains.
Stupid pimp stormtrooper Diamondback.
Oh my. That was an embarrassing. Hey, I'll say this: the Punisher does not have anything nearly as embarrassing as that. That is just, no doubt about that. But again, Cottonmouth, what a great character, right? What a great villain, and you don't do anything with him. Like I think Cottonmouth is a much more interesting character and a much more dynamic personality than any of the villains in the Punisher series. I'll say that.
I would have to agree with that.
Iron Fist couldn't get through it. It was that bad. I got to episode 3. It's like, no, I'm not dealing with this. I didn't even watch the Defenders. So I don't even know if there's any Defenders connection in the show. If I guess people can tell you in the comments if there are.
I don't think so.
I think Karen Page is sad because of some of the stuff that happened in Avengers or Defenders.
Oh, okay. Okay, fair enough,
Yeah.
fair enough. So I guess for me, it kind of lands squarely in the middle, I guess. It's... I guess it's right there with Luke Cage to a certain extent, maybe slightly above it. Cause at least, again, John Bernthal gives a great performance where Mike Coulter does not. So I think it's just above Luke Cage for me, which I thought itself was just average at best.
Yeah. I think I might be right there with you as far as my rankings go.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I can't say that even Daredevil season 2, with its pacing problems and its, pouring hand stuff at the end had some real compelling stuff going on in it, including the Punisher stuff, which was actually, was like the best parts of that show. Iron Fist is just awful. I did finish it. Yeah. And it's just terrible.
I didn't even start that one.
It's the only,
you don't need to.
It's the only Marvel property they've actually made, which is just completely a fucking waste of time so far.
Inhumans?
Oh, I haven't watched Inhumans. That's right. Like I would, okay.
Which is by the same guy that did Iron Fist.
Yeah. So I don't have high hopes for that. I would say this is, probably up, above Defenders and Luke Cage just because it's more consistent. Like,
yeah, sure.
Like I'd probably give it like a 3.5 John Bernthal grunts out of 5 or something. It's just structurally weird. It feels like Punisher out of all of these ones could have been shorter. Like, oh, this was a character we didn't expect to even do a show on, but he was so popular in season 2. Then like, okay, let's do a short mini series with him. And there's so many other stories in the Max story or something that I could tell you like, oh man, you could do like take 2 stories from the Max universe and I could make you a great fucking 8-episode season of Punisher. And it would be amazing.
You could have done, not to, because we'd be here all day, talking about what storylines they could have done. Like in Daredevil season 2, I was like, oh, they're going to do the storyline where he's in prison of all these criminals. He's going to kill everyone like, one by one over time. They're going to do something like that. It's like, oh, I guess they kind of do that, but they could have done a couple episodes of that, or kind of the slaver storyline where he goes after this, slave and sex trafficking ring, where it's just like these despicable, character, like I forget if it was in some South American or Central, American country, and that's a fantastic arc.
Oh yeah,
I thought they could have done something like that. Maybe we'll get that in season 2. But there was just, again, Nick, we have this. We're bringing in all these ideas because we've read the comics and we love it so much. And again, it just feels like a wasted opportunity in a lot of cases.
Yeah, and I realize that they want to branch out and they want to do their own thing, and they want to make their own version that like fits within their universe a little bit more, but. I don't know. I feel like it's just I think the missed opportunity aspect of it is what makes me the saddest of all about it. I did enjoy it though. I will say I don't regret watching it like I did regret watching Iron Fist. Like if I could scrub my brain of 13 hours, that would be like the first thing to go. Travis, what did you feel overall, buddy?
Oh, a couple of things here. I mean, for one thing, they really should have done.
Mm-hmm.
They should just erase his memory and say, wait, nope, that's a different movie entirely. Never mind. I think that the problem I have with this show is that a lot of the other Marvel shows, I'm like, well, they should have cut out this part and then maybe it would have been better. But I feel like, oh, maybe they should have just cut out like everything that wasn't Punisher in this one. It would have made it better. That's the biggest issue I have with it. It's like Punisher and Micro are great. I do actually like the backstory of like him trying to like find his like his team members again, where like some die, but whatever. That's kind of a cool story. Gives him a little bit gives him the backstory of like what he did.
Yeah, we learn a little bit more about him.
Yeah, and like that's good, but yeah, the Madani storyline is slow, and the PTSD storyline, it just has a really odd message to it that I just can't really get through. Overall, the fighting scenes are great. Really, the best thing they could have done is switched out Karen Page with Rosario Dawson. That was the main problem with this one. I think Rosario Dawson didn't show up.
That's the thing that was missing.
No Rosario. Unbelievable. None of that.
Yeah, it's weird.
None of that Cuban coffee, as Luke Cage would put it.
Cuban coffee.
I think I feel like you want to give it a number rating, or do you have?
Yeah, it's probably a little lower than I should give it, but I'm going to give it a 6 out of 10.
6 out of 10. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, it was fun to watch, but there's actually not a whole lot I fondly remember of it.
Well, I'll tell you what, I've already rewatched a couple episodes of it, but I've only rewatched episodes 1, 2, and 10. Like, those are the ones I rewatched.
Wow. See, that's the thing. You skip those other 8.
Yeah,
and it's just like
I skipped them around because I'm like, yeah, I kind of remember what happens here. Yeah, it's just
or that just doesn't matter.
So, is there anything last minute we want to bring up before we go right into a spoiler section so we talk about the ending?
Oh, okay. No, I mean, that was it. I was just going to ask if we could do the spoiler stuff.
Oh, yeah, of course. Before we get out of here, of course, if you want to watch Punisher first before you go to the spoiler section, completely understand. Maybe check out some of our old episodes on our back catalog on iTunes at Unapologetic Geek Out. Just check out our other Netflix and Kills, or maybe just our regular, podcast episode where we talk about the news and have guests on and good stuff like that. The UGO podcast. And you can follow us on Facebook, Twitter at UGO Podcast. Our Instagram's the same thing. Check out some of our convention pictures. They're a fun time. Chris, can you tell the people where they can find you and your awesome stuff?
Sure. Well, you can find out about all our awesome stuff on weareair.net, a video game show. We talk about the latest video game news, trailers, a topic of our choosing or your choosing, and all sorts of nonsense in between. You can follow us on Twitter at weareaircast. Go check us out on Facebook, or you can email us at weareairpodcast@gmail.com. And you can follow me on Twitter at Chris J. Herman. And hey, if you're a Twitch fan, you can watch all my great Twitching, which I'm doing right now, which hasn't been much because I've been so damn busy, but you can occasionally watch me probably play Wolfenstein or whatever other nonsense at Mr. Revenant7.
Yeah, I've been seeing you killing some of them Nazis. So
Nazis, I want my scalps, man.
I want me my scalps. But we'll have to wait until after this small musical break in order to get us some more Nazi scalps. We'll be back right after this. And welcome to the spoiler section for Punisher.
Spoiler, someone gets punished.
So this one, I wanted to save this segment here because I know for most people this will not be a spoiler since they are familiar with the comics, with Billy Russo's identity.
Or it means nothing to you.
Or it means nothing to you. Billy Russo, in the comics, he's a 2-bit gangster that Punisher throws through a window and gets his face cut up. And he's no longer Billy the Butte, which was his name before. Now
Not
he's
his pretty face.
Now he's Jigsaw, which he is a classic Punisher villain. He feels like the Punisher villain now, since we've seen him like in 2 movies already. And he's like one of the, I guess he's the most prominent. Like I guess if I were to name a Punisher villain, he'd be the first one that comes to mind, I guess.
Oh.
But yeah, this one they switch him up to be Billy, just his friend Billy, that is a fellow soldier of Frank's that makes his own merc organization called, what was it, Hammer? No,
Anvil.
Something
Wrong one.
It was
Whatever, it doesn't matter.
Some other manly sounding device. I don't know. So, and then the twist comes later in that he is part of the conspiracy against Frank. So this is on one point interesting and at one point a little disappointing. Well, at one point I was like, even I didn't remember right away that Billy Russo was Jigsaw. So when he first shows up, I'm like, hey, when he first shows up with that smile of his, I'm like, why do I fucking hate that guy? Like,
it was his first reaction.
Like I went to Travis like, I hate that fucking guy. That guy's a bad guy. I don't know. And like, I was just looking at his face. I'm like, I don't like his face, Travis. Like, maybe it was just me being jealous of his beautiful face. But yeah, he turns out to be, a bad guy near the end of this. And it's a weird character switch because it's like his whole character becomes a different person.
He's really caring about Frank in the first part of the season.
They really try and sell you on him being Frank's friend in the beginning.
Yeah.
Which is like, okay, I guess. And you think like, oh, maybe it's all an act, but he's like doing stuff that he doesn't have to. Like he's acting like, well, with the PTSD kid, he still seems like the same character in the first 6 episodes, no matter who he's fucking talking to. And then suddenly by episode 7, he like flips a switch, and now suddenly he's completely different.
And that's bad writing. That's one of my big problems with that. With his character specifically, it's like Ben Barnes. He gives a good performance, but it's that switch. It's not earned whatsoever. It's just like, okay, what the hell? Again, it feels inauthentic. It's like it's just convenient for the plot for the last half of the season. It's like, oh, all right,
it's very strange. Yeah. And at first, I'm gonna feel bad for him because Madani is like sleeping with him just to get information. It seems like, and. I gotta tell you, I don't really like Madani very much as a character either. Like, she doesn't really have a whole lot to her character. Like, I don't remember a lot about her.
I like her mother because her mother is the voice of one of the Quarian admirals in Mass Effect 2 and 3. That voice actress. So I was like, hey, I know that.
I know I forget her name, but she is
she's great. She's in every sci-fi show ever.
She's got a great, sexy, like craggly kind of voice. That's
craggly.
awesome.
Yes.
I don't know how to say, like, craggly is not a very. It doesn't sound nice, craggly, but I don't know how to describe it.
She has a sultry voice. That's how I would
sultry. Okay. Now, Jessica Rabbit has a sultry voice. She has a craggly fucking voice.
All right, fair enough.
She is. But yeah, so we get a final face-off with Russo and Rollins against the Punisher. And what I really like about this too is that they figure out where Frank and Micro are, and it's like, hey, so we're taking care of that, right? And like, I think Billy,
I'm not.
Billy is like, yeah, I sent some guys over. Like, why aren't you going over? Why aren't you going over? Like, I do like how they treat Frank like a monster. Where
it's like, all right, no one's going over.
I ain't fucking going over there. Like, that's why I got guys to do that sort of stuff for me. And yeah, they end up doing the whole Frank getting captured on purpose thing, so that they can fake Micro's death and get him away from Rollins and Billy. So Frank is being tortured, and we have a face off with Rollins where Frank and Rollins get to finally exchange some dialogue. And Rollins switches on a dime too. Now he's psycho, and is starting
okay.
Like before, he's very calm and collected, and now he's just like, man, fuck this guy. He's fucking crazy. To the point where even Billy's like, man, fuck this guy, and lets Frank go to kill his ass.
That seems again like a really weird character turn. Like, make up your mind. Are you his friend or not?
Yes.
Well, it's interesting because after the switch happens, it's not like I don't like Billy Russo as a character too, because he realizes he's in direct conflict with Frank, but Frank and Billy have a very deep respect for one another. In the fact that Billy says like, well, I promised him I'd end it quick if he gave us the info. Like, I promised I'd just quick shoot him, I wouldn't torture him anymore. It's like,
Rollins is like, oh, fuck that.
Your promise. Like, and, yeah, so Rollins goes down in a pretty gruesome fashion.
Yep. Eyeballs.
Well, maybe you shouldn't give adrenaline to the guy that you're torturing.
Yeah. Well, I knew eventually it's like, okay, this guy is going to die because they're focusing on his eye, the fact that his eye's all messed up. He's blind. I'm thinking, all right. And then as soon as he's like, I'm going to take one of your eyes, I'm like, okay. So as soon as Punisher, as soon as Frank breaks free, he's going to take his, the other guy's eye. He also got the bad one in the end as well when he gouged it. I was like, oh, okay. Yeah. So I was waiting for that moment. Yeah.
Yeah, that's where I realized who that character was, because they didn't give out Rollins' name in the beginning. Yeah. And then so like his eye gets milky, and I'm like, oh, I know that son of a bitch. In the comics, he's got an eye patch, like he's got the whole eye kind of fucked up. But yeah, so we get out of there, and then we have a final face-off with Billy and Frank. I like this one too, because they end up meeting up at Curtis's place too, where Billy is facing off with Curtis, and they have a tussle until Frank shows up with a sniper rifle, and they kind of make this deal like, okay, well, I'll let Curtis go, but we got to face off at the merry-go-round or wherever the hell Frank's family got murdered, which was kind of a dick move on Billy's point of just
a bit.
Yeah, how about we go visit the site of your most painful memory?
Yeah,
only if I get to kill you first.
And then he gets the final two teenagers that are working there at night, and he gets them, straps them to the merry-go-round and has them like, they're bleeding out, Frank. You only got a limited amount of time. So forcing Frank's hand into like meeting him in open conflict, and it's a pretty intense firefight that ensues.
Just imagine those kids be like, I get paid less than minimum wage.
Right?
Culminating into a point of, I think, Frank is getting, fucked up during the fight. Madani shows up without backup because she's kind of dumb. And like, I didn't really get that, like, why she didn't like just call somebody and go like, hey, I know where the Punisher and this guy are fighting.
Probably because they probably shoot both of them.
Yeah, that's true.
At that point, it wouldn't be the worst scenario of how much trouble Frank and all them have caused them. Like,
Fair
I couldn't, hey, so she shows up to basically get shot in the face.
Yep.
And to not die, apparently, which is pretty
That was
interesting.
weird. I was like, oh, they killed her. I was like, oh, wow.
Yeah.
And it's like, oh, no, she's fine. It's like, what?
Yeah, he
He
didn't,
said, you survived a shot to the head. And I wonder, part of me wonders if they filmed two different endings with her alive and her dead, and test audiences were like, no, this is too dark or something. It just felt weird.
I would not be surprised.
Because she looked like, nah, she was bleeding a lot. She got shot in the head. And
She actually gets better off than Misty does.
yeah. And I'm just, that was weird. I was like, felt really inconsistent. I wonder if there's another ending somewhere where she's not around.
Yeah, and then we culminate with Frank fucking up Billy's face on that glass.
Yeah.
Where he's like, I'm not going to kill you, Billy. I want to make it so that every time you look in your at your fucked up face, you're going to remember what I did to you.
Yikes.
And it's pretty dark, like, in what they do to his face, like, when he finally starts to, like, just scrape it along the glass.
Yeah.
Like, it's like, oh, god damn.
Yeah, that's not like a cut. You're like mutilating his face.
Yeah, it was pretty messed up.
Yeah, that's not that's not just skin damage. That's like
Nerve damage.
I mean, that's nerve damage. That's bone and tendon damage. That's muscle damage. I mean, you can't fix that at that point. So
Yeah, they show him later with his face just cocooned in this big fucking bandage thing. It actually looks really funny. Like, it's just
I'm glad you pointed that out because it's like the guy, Ben Barnes. He's a slim guy, which I always thought was like that was fine. I went along with it. Like even though Jigsaw, Billy in the comics he's built like Frank. He's a very broad-shouldered Italian guy, right? And here, yeah, when they have him in that giant cast, it's like a bobblehead because he's like doesn't have any shoulders. It's like that was a little weird.
I thought he was trying to sell me Yummy Mummy. I don't know.
Yeah.
Like, so, and then they have the doctors go like, he might not even remember who he is. He might have amnesia. And, the facial scar, he'll be unrecognizable. And I'm like, oh, so that we can switch out another actor in here?
Yep.
Like, there's...
Oh, you think that they might do that?
I think that's a weird line to drop if you're not planning on switching actors or doing something different.
I mean, it at least gives them the option.
Sure. Yeah.
If for some reason like his contract wouldn't go through or something.
Yeah, because I otherwise I don't know why you drop that line and not like why you not just have him show him in the bandages and go, oh, that's fucking Jigsaw, and like why have that dialogue with the doctors go over? But I don't know, maybe they're just covering their asses. I'm not sure.
Yeah, interesting. I would say it's like even though I didn't like the writing for Billy this season, I would like to see Ben Barnes take on that character. I am interested to see that,
Yeah, the more
again,
traditional.
Hopefully they just swap out the writers and give him something where it's like he's tonally consistent. He's in, his personality is consistent throughout the rest of the season. But yeah,
his
they want to
personality
do more.
wasn't consistent throughout the season.
Yeah, I mean, true. It's like they didn't have to be like a traditional Jigsaw, but I'm fine with a different take on the character, but just keep it consistent all the way through. Don't have him be Frank's friend and then occasionally like, well, he didn't show up, but we're going to kill him together. Or then he's a man of honor, yet he captures two teenagers, bleeds them out for Frank. It's like, well, that's not very honorable. It's not very honorable, like duel. Again, it just doesn't work.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I wouldn't mind seeing him taking a more traditional Jigsaw role to see what he does with that.
Yeah.
I think the only plot one he didn't wrap up was Micro. Micro is back with his family, so that's pretty nice.
Oh, yeah.
I actually kind of like him and his wife. They seem to have pretty good chemistry.
Mm-hmm.
Of just like how dare are you fucking alive this whole goddamn time? Really?
Yeah, you made all my best friends, so we're even.
That was a great moment. I really liked that moment, like where Frank and the wife are hanging out. And it's you can tell it's coming.
You see it coming, yeah.
Well, the look on her face, that actress did a great facial acting where it's like, damn, you're going to have to get her a thirst aid kit because she is unbelievably thirsty for Frank right now.
Oh,
It
sure.
is, like just the look on her face was like, oh, it's about to happen, Frank. Tactical retreat.
Especially since Micro was like watching the whole time.
Right. It did show him being pretty pathetic at the end there too, like drinking, like, and Frank's just like, hey, look, son of a bitch, I don't want to fuck your wife.
Why not? She's hot.
I mean, obviously I could. Don't get me wrong. I mean, look at me. But I don't want to. I choose not to. Let's get this straight. I do like, the daughter and, Micro's interactions. That was a really touching moment.
Yeah.
Son's kind of a dumbass, though.
I think the son's, well, he's supposed to be kind of an asshole so that he can make the mistake of calling the cops about Frank early on.
Which I'm like, I didn't like that. I was just like, I could see where they're going with this. Again, it just felt so predictable. And maybe it was the actor or most likely the writing, but that didn't work either. It was just like, all right, we just did that to get to that point. All right.
I want to go from holding a knife to your throat to playing catch with you in the next
Yeah,
scene.
I was just like, what?
Go long, buddy.
Whatever works, I guess.
Yeah, again, not consistent.
But yeah, that was a neat place to end it too. The final shot is Frank going to the PTSD meeting and actually opening up and being like, "Hey, I'm fucked up. Like I'm broken as I'm trying to be better," sort of thing.
Which that seems nice and all, except for like you can't tell me someone just go, you're fucking Frank Castle.
Yes.
1 second, I'm gonna go call the cops.
Yeah, I mean they do like. Curtis goes like, we don't, we hold each other's secrets here. And I'm like, yeah, I don't know if that holds for wanted criminals. Like,
sorry, Nick, if you have a bounty on your head for any amount of money, I'm turning you in. Like, if it's just the $600 I need for rent with you paying for it, I'm still turning you in.
Well, even if there wasn't a bounty, you'd think like, oh my God, this is the most dangerous motherfucker I've ever heard of. I'm just going to leave. Like,
I'm out of here. Sorry.
That's an interesting place to take it though. I find it interesting Punisher going to a group session and like sharing and stuff. That's interesting.
My problem wasn't with that scene in particular. My problem was that how they got there. There's no way that the government would give Frank Castle a clean slate. They're like, no,
that was the
you're a
worst
psychopath. We're going to put you in jail. It doesn't matter the situation. They're going to put him in jail. So that end scene was fine. I liked it. I was like, okay. Again, it's Bernthal's take on the Punisher. It's the MCU's take on the Punisher. I have no problem with that. It's just how it led up to that scene was like, no. You could have just done it where you could have took out the Madani in the hospital scene and just had it where, wouldn't it have been more tragic if Madani had died and then he could do nothing for her and he just left and he's still like, yeah, even though you beat the bad guy, you still lost in some way. And then just have him show up at the end in the meeting. And then Curtis is not going to rat him out. And those other guys don't rat him out because they all have that shared experience. Wouldn't that have been more powerful, you think? Yeah. I don't know.
I mean, I find it interesting because like the story structure for Punisher shouldn't be super hard. But now in season 2, they're going to have to create a reason for him to be the Punisher again.
Right.
Because,
which again, it's just like, ugh.
Because in the other stories, it's just like, that's just what he does. Like, you can start a story with just him being the Punisher, because there's no retirement or in-between parts for Punisher. In this one, he's, for the trade-off of him being a more regular person, we have to keep justifying him doing the stuff that he does.
Yeah.
The easiest way would probably actually be to use Jigsaw next season and have him immediately kill Micro's family.
I think he'll go after...
That'd be the easiest way of doing it.
That would make sense. Or Curtis. I think that could be the other thing to start off, and then you get to Micro's family. But yeah, I agree. That's probably what they would do.
Oh, and also no battle van scene, really? We have the Punisher battle van.
They had the van. Like, I was like, oh, they're going to upgrade it. They're going to put all these toys. It's like, nah, it's just a van.
All right.
It has a drone in it, right?
Come on, season 2 though. I want fucking battle van, battle truck.
Yeah,
I want Punisher's battle truck.
I think they're going to go. It's going to be a more traditional Punisher season 2. I think because that's the thing. I mean, I kind of looked at other reviews, and a lot of people had the same problem that we had, where it was just too slow, and where again, Bernthal's take on the Punisher is great. It's just like the story itself didn't work, and I think they're going to take that and hopefully make a better season 2, a more, consistent season 2.
I wonder where that whole thing is going to go now that the Disney deal is they're yanking their shit from Netflix.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a good question. I still think, people are, not to get off topic, I think people are kind of panicking a little bit in regards to the acquisition in terms of the types of Marvel films we're going to get. I think even if, Disney, it looks like they're going to get the rights back to the X-Men and all those characters, we're still going to keep getting R-rated Deadpool movies because there's too much money in it. They'll just have it be where they'll treat
Disney
it like
likes
the
money.
Netflix shows. They'll treat it like these shows where it's a part of the universe, kinda, maybe. I don't know. But it'll just go off on its own type of thing.
Well, this show does have I would say hey, let's do a whole reference section of how they refer back to the previous Netflix shows or the Avengers or any of that. It almost this show more than any of the other ones does not relate back to any of the Defenders or Avengers at all.
Karen Page shows up. That's the best you're gonna get.
Yeah.
Oh, great.
I said, best.
You're absolutely right. I think because for the most part, where does this take place? At least in Brooklyn, a borough over. There's Spider-Man. He's in Queens. It's like Spider-Man not get involved. Avengers Tower is just which I notice is not in the show. It's not there at all in the New York City skyline. I was like, where's Avengers Tower? It's it's not there. And I wonder, I don't know, it's that weird relationship between all the Marvel shows and the Netflix shows and the Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. I don't fucking know. I don't really care anymore. I stopped watching that thing.
Yeah, they're in space, whatever.
They're in space right now? All right, fair enough.
Even the tower, the Avengers Tower's in space.
Yeah, that's where it is right now. It might as well be in this show.
Yeah.
They have to start crossing that stuff over. Because there's starting to be really inconsistencies. And I think that might be because you got Ike Perlmutter, who is a world-renowned prick, who's known for being such a tight budget, fucking over actors in the press and everything. That's the guy that was kind of who that Kevin Feige had to go through to get anything done. And now he doesn't have to do that anymore. Now he just reports directly to Bob Iger. I wonder if it's that relationship that's at work where it's basically Perlmutter saying we're going to do our own thing. We're not going to have these types of crossover stuff, even though we should. So I'm hopeful that will change in the next few years.
It's interesting. I was actually unaware of most of that. So that makes a lot of sense though.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I wish they would be a little more like the Arrowverse of at least the shows crossing over with one another.
Even just cameos of the characters.
Well, I wouldn't even mind because now Iron Fist is supposed to be taking care of the city, right?
Mm-hmm.
I wonder if he would show up at one point hey, what's all this gun violence going on? And then Frank clocks him one and just knocks him out for an episode.
And he's done.
And go haha, fuck you, Iron Fist.
What they need to start doing is what I think a lot of Marvel movies are going to be doing right now. And what we kind of saw in Thor Ragnarok was where Doctor Strange helps out Thor for 10 minutes. Do something like that where there is a sense of a universe where it's not an obnoxious cameo. It's no, it works in the course of the plot.
Mm-hmm.
It's fine. It's see, and that's what helps, and it establishes a relationship between these two characters who never met before. That's great. Do that with these Netflix shows. It doesn't have to be where you have to, it's not hey, look at that green guy tearing up Harlem or whatever like that. Just, there's an organic way to do it. And I think Marvel feels we can just throw a character in there and just have it work for this instance. And we don't have to make it a huge deal, but just again, you have this playground, play around with it.
Yeah, they have a whole dude, their version of Gladiator, whose job it is to make costumes for people.
Yes.
And he only shows up in one fucking show.
Very good point, actually.
What the fuck? Not even Iron Fist is man, I would maybe a head bandana that can block bullets or something.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. Use that motherfucker. How much work could he be doing just making Daredevil fucking suits?
Oh, Daredevil might go through a lot of suits. You don't know.
I don't know. Just make one of those, spray paint a skull on it, and call it a day.
Pretty much.
But yeah. Other than that, this has been a real fun time talking some Punisher with you, Chris. I'm so glad we had you on.
Oh, thanks for having me on.
Of course, anytime. Love talking comics with you, and just general geeky stuff and that sort of thing. And if you want to hear Chris talk about video games specifically, definitely check out the We Are Errorcast, because it is a fun time to talk about this, current state of video games. It's a great time to be talking about it, and I enjoy listening, that's for sure.
Thank you.
Other than that, I think we can just wrap this one up, guys. We've I don't know if
we're all punished out.
All punished out. Like, I can't scream anymore. I can't do any more guttural screams. My voice
Gonna protect him, Rick.
We're gonna do it. We're Unapologists. Got in. We're out. Actually,
Yeah, I should have done that.
Oh no.